Now, did you see?
Oh, yeah.
He didn't have a wall.
No.
We got a structural engineer coming out taking pictures and giving analysis. So you want to sue us later? We're going to countersue you for. You know the one who dance?
I've got another and saw that crap over this roof and
Yeah.
everything. I'm like, oh shit, what do we do?
Yeah, but then you got the eaves up there. There's no nothing. He didn't have a wall.
Yeah.
Whoever built that attached to our building.
Yeah.
Not my problem.
Who we're missing?
I'm trying to think who we're still.
I think we still got 3 or 4 people that we're waiting on, so I'll wait another 5 minutes and we'll go and get started.
All right, can everybody hear me okay? All right, we're going to be using that screen tonight, so if you are not positioned well and you want to move around, that's where we'll end up, and we'll go ahead and get started. There may be one or two others that join us as we get going, but I want to be respectful of your time, so we're going to try to get this moving, and we'll keep moving along. And did everybody get a binder that has been here so far? Okay, then we will go ahead and get started. This is kind of the first meeting of our housing policy. It's also a chance to get everybody back on the same page. We have people that are going to have heard every single thing I've done tonight, and we have people who have heard none of what I've done tonight. And so we're going to get everybody back so we're all doing the same thing. The binders I'll go through as we go along, but I think it would be helpful also if we started just with simple introductions. And if you would, who you are and what you do, because again, we tried to bring people along that were developers, that were realtors, that were landlords. We had tried to bring people who were associated with housing to the process so that as we're doing these things, we want your expertise. We want you to say, well, that's a great idea, Doug, but what you don't understand is in the real estate market, this is what's going to happen, and it's not going to do what you think. If in the banking, they're not going to be able to get mortgages for that. Landlords are going to have a fit if you do that. That's why you guys are here. There's the community piece of this, but there's also the professional side of this. We want to come up with something that gives us the best housing stock in the city of Middletown. But we want to do it in the right way, both for our residents, but also for our city, so that we can get income tax and property tax, and we can pave our streets and do the things that we want to do. So that's why I've asked all of you to join me and help put this together. So if we could, I'll start. I'm Doug Atkins. If you haven't met me, I'm Doug Atkins. I'm the city manager for the city of Middletown. Been with the city 13 years. This is my 4th year as city manager. And I'm picking off probably one of the hardest things that we've ever tried to do. And you guys are along for the ride. So we'll start here and we'll work our way around.
Mark Dixon, residential mortgage lender, Guardian Saver.
Jackie Phillips, Health Commissioner, Middletown City Health Department.
Yes, ma'am.
Celeste Didlick Davis, member of the public and CEO of a small nonprofit in the community.
Walter?
Walter Leaf, Leaf Realtors, been in real estate and owning property for probably 46 years in Middletown.
Mindy?
Mindy Muller with Community Development Professionals. I'm just here to serve.
Jason?
Jason Hightower, Hightower Petroleum, Highmark Construction Group, and HP Energy. I'm an IT project manager.
Start along the back.
Shelby Quinlivan, Communications for the City of Middletown. Amy Vittori, City Council, and I unfortunately have Gracie Benke. Sarah Blackson, General Counsel. That's the law department for the City of Middletown.
Rodney Gators, Paul, the Middletown Police Chief.
I'm Paul Lally, the fire chief for the city of Middletown.
Susan Cohen, General Counsel for the city.
Larry Mulligan, Mayor of Middletown. Wendy Robinson, dirt farmer.
We don't need you anymore.
I'll take some pizza.
Sir?
Dickie Brandon, Star Mark Industries, builder, investor, landlord.
I'm Wendy Hunter, and I'm Office Manager at Coldwell Banker in Middletown.
Steve Bohannon, City Council member, owner of Bohannon Roofing, landlord.
I'm Tori Coles. I'm an associate minister at New Era Baptist Church as a public member and community member.
Ashley Holmes, City Planner, City of Middletown. Jennifer Freaky, Economic Development.
Welcome, everybody. Oh, hi.
Hi, I'm Liz Fields with McBride Dale Clarion. We're a planning consultant firm, and we are the ones on board with the city to update the city's master plan.
Welcome, everybody. First off, thank you. It's after hours. This is going to be a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of headaches. It's going to be hard. Thank you for being willing to participate. The people who are staff members, the police chief, the fire chief, health department, they'll be in and out as we get it to different pieces and we talk about, yeah, but what about if we need them, they'll be here. But on a night-to-night basis, my guess is, unless they're just interested and want to come along for the ride, they will not be here at each of these meetings. The core group of the disciplines and the community members, that's, you guys are the nuts and bolts that puts this together. So go ahead, please. This is all going to be part of our master plan. The last time we did a city master plan was in 2005. That was designed to go through 2010. What happened somewhere around 2008 and 2009 is the Great Recession hit, and frankly, the world in Middletown changed dramatically. So a lot of the stuff that was in the old master plan became just silly. I mean, just gibberish. There was things in there about we're going to build 2,000 new houses. Not during the recession, we're not. A lot of those things became completely obsolete. A lot of the other things that were not housing related got done. But what happened as we started coming out of the recession is we didn't have a lot of money, so we didn't put a lot of money into planning and master planning and all the other things. So we finally got to a place where it was time to start talking about what are we going to do as a city to start moving us the rest of the way. The world's getting better. What are we going to do as Middletown to make sure that we ride that wave and we get better as well? And so we've started working on this last year and started with community visioning. We had the Community Building Institute and Middletown Moving Forward, which is the Middletown's Community Improvement Corporation, did a series of public events where they went out and said, it was community visioning. We know who we've been. We know what we are right now. What does the future of Middletown look like? What do we want our city to look like? What kind of amenities do we want? What does the future look like? They gathered all that together, and it was adopted by council last year, and it's up and running, and it is in your folder. I believe it's the first tab that's in there. Housing study was Danter. We'll come back to that. Downtown Master Plan was Downtown Middletown, Inc. That's our merchant association for downtown. They came together with a consultant, spent an entire year working on things. It goes all the way from the style of trash cans we're going to have downtown, to the benches, to trees, to business fronts, to signage, everything that would go around through downtown. And a piece of that is residential downtown living, mixed use where it's retail on the bottom and apartments up above. Those types of things are all incorporated. As we get into those kind of discussions in other meetings, we'll have that in reference as well so that you guys have a chance to look at that. We can always reference back to each of these pieces and go, is what we're doing consistent with what we said we wanted to do? So that's kind of the style of what we're working on. Zoning code, most of our zoning code was written in the 1950s. We spent a 2-year process to update that. Two things had happened. Number one, the law in Ohio had changed a lot over the last 50 years. And beyond that, the style of land use and the style of zoning as a body of law it kind of evolved and it changed. And so we adopted in February of this year a new zoning code. It's a development code. We now have one of the best zoning codes in the state of Ohio as far as state of the art, right out in front of what the best practices are in the state of Ohio. We got a lot going on at the airport and transportation. Go ahead and move on. In your, that's fine. I'll hit that. In your booklets, you'll see, and again, I'm not going to read that to you. You guys can flip through that later. But it is a presentation on the different pieces of the visioning process. Go ahead. I think it's the second one you'll see is the Downtown Master Plan. Again, I'm not going to read it to you, but as you get home and you guys have time, flip through it and you'll see street lights, trash cans, benches, trees, businesses, signage, residential, new hotel, all kinds of stuff. Airport, I'm going to spend just a minute on, just because it's something we're working on very hard right now. We are working on an airport layout plan, which is effectively the airport master plan under FAA guidelines. We have done about $1 million in rehabilitation of the taxi ramps and aprons on the airport property. Last year, we replaced the weather system. This year, we are replacing all of the runway lights. If you're familiar with Hook Road, we have purchased a parcel over there that's going to allow us to stub a road and utilities, which is going to open up 110 acres, is that right? 130 acres for industrial development in the aviation world. And we are working right now on a really cool project where we have received from the state budget $750,000 to build an education hangar at the airport. One of the things that Jennifer works on with economic development is at 3.9%, 4% unemployment, everybody that wants to work is pretty much working. And so when we're starting to talk about you ought to bring your aviation plant and put it on our 130 acres, they say, who's going to work it? And the answer is, well, I don't know. I mean, so what we are working on is an education hangar. We've been partnering, we just announced this week at the Cincinnati State board meeting, we are partnering with them on an avionics program, which is the electronics that go into aircraft. We are bringing that program this fall to Middletown. We're working with Butler Tech on a drone program, working with Marlon Stiles in the Middletown City School District to expose kids to a lot of these things early. And the idea is, down the road, as we get these pieces up and running, that we say not only do we have 130 acres, but we've got 20 new graduates coming out every year to feed your new company if you bring it to Middletown. That, when will it, would take about 19 that we get that hangar built, probably? The hangar will be built probably around 2019. We will start incorporating this fall the avionics program, but we'll eventually move most of that to the airport. Gives us a lot of cool stuff. Talked a little bit about the zoning code. It's now up and running. It's in place. The very last piece of this, including after, with the housing, is transportation. When we know what we're doing with the airport and the skydivers, when we know what we're doing downtown, when we know what we're doing on the east end at the highway, when we know what's going on at the mall, when we get all these other pieces together, and then we say, and we finished our housing stuff, and this is what we're going to do with our housing. The very last piece is to say, okay, now that we know what we're doing citywide, how do we better move people to make that work? Pedestrian, bicycle, automobile, public transit. How do we reimagine those? How do we do traffic signals? How do we move lanes? How do we add bike lanes? All of that. That'll be the last piece, but it'll be designed after we know what we're doing through the rest of the city. So that's going to be one of the last pieces to come. We're scheduling that for probably the last quarter of this year to get started. My guess is it'll get into 19, the first half of 19 before it's done. So that's kind of the 30,000 foot picture. I came out in May of last year and scared the community, frankly, talking about housing. I didn't do it necessarily to scare the community, but I did do it to get everybody's attention, and I was successful. Around this area are the charts that I had brought out that went along with this housing workshop that I presented at council, then I took out on the road. We were at the community center. We were at some of the schools. We were at Rotary. We were at a number of places talking about the housing issues that are going on in the city of Middletown. And if you're not familiar with this, it's in your packet, but I'll quickly go around. We started going by census tract and talking about what's going on in each census tract in each of these areas. Medium household income, 2-bedroom units or less, housing less than 100,000, built prior to 1970, total population below the poverty level, charged felons, number of rental units, drug overdoses when we were fighting the heroin, vacancy of housing, major calls for police service, our pavement, unemployment, labor force participation, delinquent water shutoffs, the age of our sewer pipes, number of people that have a bachelor's degree, evictions from rental property, the age of our water mains. When you look at this, and if you look at the chart in your books, what you'll find is we tried to give you a balance either with Butler County or Ohio. This is what's going on in other areas. This is how we compare to that. Red means we're worse. Yellow means we got some problems. Green means we're at least at the level of Butler County or the state or doing better. There's a lot of red in these areas. It's a problem. And as you go around the room, certain areas are red in almost every chart, which means we have some unhealthy neighborhoods in many ways. So I wanted to get that message out and make people understand why I thought this was important, why I thought we needed to take action. Go ahead, please. Go one more. Thank you. And the biggest reason, what really stirred my attention, was looking at the auditor's values for the city of Middletown over a 4-year period, and this is 2011 to 2015, when most of Butler County and most of Ohio property values were starting to go up again. Everything's getting better little by little by little. We lost $58 million in residential housing value when everybody else in the area was getting better. that showed me that we have a serious problem that we need to stop and take a look at and figure out what is going on. Go ahead, please. One of the things we did while we were going through all this is we asked Danter to do a citywide residential analysis. This is that. I have electronic. If anybody wants it, I can get it to you. It's a summary page with about 180 pages of statistics as to how they came up with what they came up with. Some of their executive summary was that the best results are from demand for housing, not just limited supply. That was an interesting comment that they made. I was at a chamber event about 2 weeks ago, and they had a realtor there, and he said, it was Tim Lewis, he said, I've been in this for about 25 years, and what I think a healthy Middletown housing market is when there's about 250 to 300 houses for sale, and somewhere around 100 of them are pending in some way. They're under contract, they just haven't closed yet. And he said that's in the past, that's what we would consider a healthy housing market for sale. He said, as of this morning, when I was at that meeting, he said there are 84 houses for sale in Middletown. And he said, there's nothing for sale. He said, there's just nothing there. And he said, and it gets back to that, it's more important to have demand for your housing. Right now, houses prices are going up, but it's because there's only 84 houses for sale. And so what's happening is you're getting multiple offers, because if you want to live in Middletown, Wendy can probably tell you, you got to move fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or they're gone.
It happened on Crawford Street today.
On Crawford.
On Crawford Street.
Multiple offers, quick, gone, going. Again, I'm glad that values are going up, but the right answer is we need more demand. We need people who want to move to Middletown. That's what we need. Significant potential for mixed use. If you look at Liberty Center, if you look at Austin Landing, one of the best trends right now going on is that whole mixed use list. They've almost created an artificial downtown. They have apartments, they got little cool stuff, they got the coffee shop, everything you'd want downtown, only they've just built it in the last 3 years and they're trying to fill it up. We have a beautiful downtown that's historic and much cooler than theirs, and we got Dora. We should be better at bringing people downtown and living downtown, and that's one of the things we'll be working on. Multiple types of rental housing, including market rate complexes, townhouses, gated luxury. We have 47% of our housing is rental, but we do not have a lot of townhouses, condos, market rate, nice stuff. Downtown, again, housing over the storefronts. A lot of our storefronts are now starting to get used. We've had almost 40 businesses open up downtown in the last 3 or 4 years, but if you look above them, almost all those units above there are either empty or they're Section 8. Not good. We need to do better. This is one thing I thought was really interesting out of the Danter study, and this is just out of the summary. And again, the 180 pages of statistics behind it said, City of Middletown, if you could build 127 single-family homes in roughly this price range, 670 market rate apartments in this type of range, and 33 condos in this type of range, you could build those every year for 5 years and you would fill them all. That's 4,000 new housing units over a 5-year period. And you would fill them all. And I went, really? And I read through the 180 pages, I went, all right. I mean, the statistics are there. Do I think it's 4,000? I don't know. I don't know if I believe 4,000. But the demand is there, and there's nothing for sale. I think, Walter, again, there's nothing for sale in Middletown, is there? No. And so, again, if we could build it and it was nice, I think people would come. Go ahead, please. So we got through that last year, and I got people all excited, and they started coming to council meetings and waiting to get involved. And I said, okay, I promise you when the time comes, which is tonight, I'll bring you in and we'll do this together. So then when we got to 2018, I started talking to council about, this is the process I'm going to use to start this process. And I said, here's something I think you guys need to see. I am 55 years old. I was born in January 1963. When I was community revitalization director, I became the purveyor of all of these old city master plans. This is the 63, the year I was born, 55 years ago, master plan for the city of Middletown. Everything in yellow is deteriorating. Everything in black is dilapidated. 1963. Look around this room. Almost the same neighborhoods, guys. For 55 years, we have said, that's a problem. And we haven't done a damn thing. We haven't fixed it. We'll get into why here in a little bit, because the answer is it's hard. But we've known for 55 years that we have issues with our neighborhoods, and we have not fixed them. I'm going to try to be the first city manager in 55 years to get it done. We're going to see. Another thing from Danter, and again, as we're talking about all these different things, part of it is just kind of an overview of how housing works. And each of you comes at it from a different area. But most of us go through the same type of a housing process in our lives. And what happens is you grow up in your parents' home. And as you leave your home, you go to your first crappy apartment that you can barely afford. And you've got the milk crates on the end of the couch, and you got the used couch you got from your uncle, and it's yours. But it's not nice. And as you get in and you start working, you get to move up to a nicer apartment. And then you get married, or you don't get married, and you get your first home. And it's usually a small starter home. It's nice, you love it, it's yours. You live there for a while, you get married, then you have kids, and you get up whatever your big home's going to be, because you got 3 kids now, and you get that home. The kids get done, you're empty nesting, you go back down to something else. Eventually you get old, and you go into some kind of senior home of whatever that is. We all go through something kind of like that. Most of us do. And so the idea is, go ahead please, we want to, in Middletown, provide an area so that no matter where you are in the housing cycle of your life, when you're ready to move up or you're ready to move down, there's a lot of alternative choices for you. Good stuff, attractive stuff, affordable stuff, things that you like, a reason to stay here. One of the things we'll talk about later is about 70% of our homes are what you would call starter homes. They're nice. I mean, there's a lot of nice, cool stuff in this city. But what happens is that when 70% of them are starter homes, if you start to get successful or if your family grows, as you get a little bit bigger, you have to leave Middletown. You simply must. Right when I want your income tax, because you're getting more successful, right when everything's starting to get good for you, you have to leave Middletown because only 30% of my housing is above starter home level. And that's spread out from the one step up to McMansions. I mean, there's just nothing there. And so you have to go to Mason or Lakota or Springboro or someplace else than Middletown because we have no housing for you. The idea would be that, again, as we work over the next 10 to 20 years, that doesn't happen anymore, to the best of our ability. This is big sweeping stuff. We're not going to, I always tell people, and I've said this so many times, I can't fix Middletown on Thursday. It doesn't work that way. It's a slow, hard grind. But if we can come up with the right things and understand what we want to do, what we will do is we'll start over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we will start torquing it in the right direction so that we get healthier and healthier and healthier as we move along. So I told council, I said, I think it's time to bring the old housing committee back. We had a committee like this back when I took over community revitalization in 2009. And in some cases, the members of that committee, in my opinion, were making policy decisions that made them money and not necessarily was working on the best interests of the city. In other words, the policy decisions were, if I do this and this and this, there'll be more houses for me to sell, and I'll get the commission because I'll find a way to get listing those, and this is what we'll do. And so I had that committee for about a year, and I just saw nothing positive coming out of it, and I disbanded it. And I let it go for 10 years because it just wasn't serving the purpose that it was designed for. But I thought, if you go back again still, thank you. This is the time to pull that group back together. This is the time for everybody to talk about the city of Middletown. I want you to look at it from your perspective, whether you are a resident a realtor, a developer, business owner, anything. Use your expertise, but we're going, and I don't care if you make money over what we do, but the overriding goal is to fix Middletown. And that's what I need you guys to work on. If you make money on it, great. If globally everybody makes money, great. But this is about fixing Middletown's housing stock so that we're a healthy community. So when you say, Doug, we really wish you'd pave more streets, we wish we had parks and recreation, we wish you'd change out our playground equipment. If we fix this, a lot of that starts to come around. And that's why I'm asking for your help. Go ahead, please. So we're going to start, I'm going to go through a number of global housing things. And we're going to go talk about them one at a time. I'm just going to glance on them tonight. And then as we start down the process, we're going to take each one of these and blow it up. And we're going to spend an evening talking about each one of these, if it takes an evening, longer if it takes longer. And the idea is we're going to talk about the big picture, the 10,000-foot items. What should we do about this as a city? Not in that neighborhood, as a city. And we're going to make some recommendations. Well, I think it's probably, most of the time it's going to look like this. There are going to be exceptions, but on this one, I think we should generally do it about like that. What we'll do then is as we get some of those done, we'll eventually go down to the neighborhood level and we'll say, okay, knowing what we want to do with rental housing, knowing what we want to do with home ownership, knowing what we want to do with these other areas, now let's look at this neighborhood and apply those to this particular neighborhood. What's going on with the streets? What's going on with the alleys? What's going on with this stuff? And talk about how do we get the things we said we wanted to do and put them into use at the neighborhood level. So, and the idea is to come up with roughly a 10 to 20 year concept of model, whatever you want to call it, of how we start moving forward, how we start making our housing stock more attractive, more competitive, bring quality families to Middletown, take care of the ones that are already here. Go ahead. Where impossible, we'll work from least intrusive to most intrusive. We have, according to the U.S. Census, 3,401 vacant housing units. That's both rental housing and homes in the city. So there's a whole lot of low-hanging fruit. I can do whatever we're going to do, whatever we decide we're going to do with vacant property. I'm not hurting anybody there. That's easy. Dink, we're going to do this to it. There isn't any homeowner, there isn't any renter, there isn't anybody that's going to be hurt other than the property owner or helped by whatever it is that we're going to do. One of the things that happened during the Great Recession and when I was in community revitalization is we saw a huge influx of people out of state and sometimes out of country who bought up a lot of our cheaper housing stock. I would go out and we'd be having problems with police or code enforcement, and I'd flip on the auditor's site and find out the guy that owns it's in Idaho or Texas or Great Britain or Mexico. Amazing. They were buying up, and they are never, ever, ever going to set foot in the city of Middletown, ever. So I have tools that if we agree we're going to use them, I can apply my influence, and they have two choices. They can come from Idaho to Middletown and fight me, or they can waive their right to administrative process, and we do what we think we need to do with that property. Again, you probably got a renter in there, so we're going to have to give some thought as to what we're going to do with that. We have local landlords. One of the other things that's been interesting, trend that I saw, is number one, we have a lot of local landlords, but what happened during the recession, which I thought was interesting, is a lot of people on the east end of town started buying property on the south end of town. And I'm surprised all of a sudden somebody on Rosedale is owning something down on Mohawk. Really? And so they're local. I have access to them. We can, again, talk to them. At least I got somebody local that I can go, what are we doing? Got to do something. And then, of course, we're going to get homeowners. At some point, as we're going through this whole process, if we decide we're going to take down every house on this side of the street, at some point we're going to hit homeowners. It's going to happen. But we're going to have to decide as a group, how do we handle that? Number one, are we willing to do that? If we are, what do we do to help the homeowner that we're going to displace, we're going to move, we're going to fix their house up, whatever it is that we're going to do, how do we help them go on so that we can fix everything that we're working on at the same time. Go ahead, please. Global issue number 1, and we'll do these long-term. I'm just going to gloss over them tonight. Tax delinquent property. Everything in red on that map is more than 1 year behind on their property taxes. 1,276 parcels representing $6.2 million in delinquent property taxes. One of the, people come to me all the time and say, Adkins, you old white guy, you hate poor people, you hate minorities. I don't. But we got a problem. We got a $6 million problem. And it's not, look at it. It's everywhere. Yes, ma'am.
Both a mix of landlords or homeowners?
All the above.
All the above.
All the vacant property, foreclosed property, bank property, everything. They're all over the place. And again, when we talked about how do we attack it, we start with vacant. The last thing we get to is the homeowners. But you have 1,276 tax delinquent properties, $6.2 million. Wonder what we could do in paving. Wonder what we could do in other areas if we had that money coming into the city. Do you think they're keeping their property up? Do you think they have the money to keep their property up? I'm going to bet you in many cases the answer to that is no. So, what do we do with this? Well, the mean thing to do is to go foreclose on them, move them out. Are we willing to do that as a community? $6.2 million problem. Are we willing to do that? Hey, I've got all the tools I need. I've got them identified. I know what addresses they are. Do a little bit more work. I can tell you from vacant to out of town, to in town, to homeowner. I can categorize all those. Give me 2 days. I could lay them all out. There you go. Are you ready as a community to start foreclosing and moving these properties out of their hands and into homeowners who can keep them up and pay their property taxes, pay their income taxes, do their thing? Yes, sir.
Do you have to initiate an action to get the county to be involved?
They will do, if we ask them to, we will. They will do that. So we'd have to do it in a controlled manner. I can't go, hey, I need 1,000 of these. They can't handle that. But if we start saying every month we're going to do 40 of these, dink, 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 start banging on them. Yes, sir.
How come we can't have our own land bank? The city of Middletown have their own land bank.
We can, but one of the problems we've had, we'll get into land banks down the road a little bit. I'm the vice chair of the Butler County Land Bank. It is the worst operating land bank in the state of Ohio. And a lot of it has to do with the Butler County Commissioners. And I've told them that. So I'm not saying anything here that they haven't heard from me before. There are a ton of tools, and we will get to them when we get down the road a little bit, that Cleveland, Toledo, and I've been up there. I've spent days with their land banks. How do you do this? What's the benefit? Show me your paperwork. I have it all. And Butler County, to this point, has not used probably 70% of the tools that are available to land banks. I have had a lot of conversations with Don Dixon and T.C. Rogers, not as much with Cindy, but they have said that if we can put something together that makes sense, they are now willing to let us start using the rest of those tools. So ask me again a couple nights down the way, and I'll go into detail, okay? Go ahead, please. Global issue 2, vacant residential property. According to the U.S. Census, there are 3,401 vacant housing units. That's apartments, that's houses, everything. Some of those are going to be natural. Somebody's moved out, the house is for sale, we haven't sold it yet. That's normal stuff. Renter, somebody moves out of a rental, goes a month or two, nobody's rented it yet. Those are natural. That's part of the normal business cycle. My guess is a lot of these are not in that cycle, especially when there's 80-some houses for sale. Most of these are truly vacant in some way. So what happens is, and we'll get to this in detail a couple nights down the road, We board them up. They have to be secured. So we board them up. How long is it okay to be vacant? If it's code compliant, if the grass is mowed and the taxes are paid, how long do we leave it vacant? Do we have anything to say about that? I'll show you some different ways to look at it. Gets back to that right, and we've had this conversation with the landlords and other things. What is the balance between the property rights of you as an owner to have that property that's the taxes are paid and you're mowing the grass and there's no problem for the city other than we're not getting any income tax and it's boarded. So is it a crime nuisance? Is it lowering property values in the neighborhood? Those types of things. What's the balance between your right as a property owner and the city's right to try to raise the values of that neighborhood by getting that house occupied? We're going to talk about that. Vacant property. There's all kinds of, when we get to it, there are literally, I'm going to guess, but I'll get you the actual number. I bet there are 40 major cities in the state of Ohio that have vacant property ordinances of some type. They range everywhere from, hey, you need to let us know, to in Minnesota, which is the most draconian one I've ever seen, second year the property is vacant, you have to pay $15,000 a year, every year. They want you to get that occupied. So we can do nothing. We can do a registration. We could put some kind of a fee in place. We'll talk about all that. I'll show you what's going on in other parts of Ohio and whether any of that makes any sense for what we're doing with vacant properties. Go ahead, please. Vacant residential land. We knocked down over the last 10 years over 500 blighted homes in the city. People have complained that I did that because I did a lot of it when I was community revitalization. Our thought and our belief was if it's going to take more than about 2/3 of the house, cost of the value of the house to put it back together, there's no commercial reason that it makes sense to do that. And so we started tearing them down. A lot of people said, yeah, but the outside didn't look that bad. Yeah, but the inside, all the copper was gone. The AC was gone. It was full of mold. When they sat for 2 or 3 years, the roof leaked. You guys didn't see what we saw. And both chiefs will tell you, vacant property when it's been vacant for a while, how big a problem is that for you two? Huge problems with drug activity. How many have we burned down in the last 10 years? Yeah. Especially over the winter, we start burning down about one a month. Somebody's squatting, somebody's trying to stay warm, they burn the house down. So, what do? We are now paying $250,000 each year to mow those 500 lots. It costs us about $500 a lot for a year to mow them, keep them under the property maintenance code, less than 6 inches of grass. As it stands right now, we will do that for the end of time. Every year, we will spend $250,000 mowing vacant lots. That's probably a kind of a dumb policy long term. We should probably do something better. Again, it gets back to if you own that lot and it's grass and it's mowed, do I have anything to say about that? As a city, do we have any right to say, no, it'd be better if that was a garden or if that was a new infill house or if it was, or is it none of my damn business? We'll talk about it. I don't know. Let's talk about it. Right now, we're paying $250,000 and no plan whatsoever on how we're going to get out from doing that. We do sell to neighbors. If you live on the left or right of that lot and you come to us and say, can I expand my yard? The answer is, sure, for $500 we'll give you the lot. Then you can mow it. End use. There are literally, and I'll show you when we get there, 20 different things that communities have done with vacant lots, community gardens, pocket parks, off-street parking, basketball courts, lots of cool stuff. But what do we think this city, and again, we'll do the global, but then at some point we'll get down to this neighborhood and say, what are we going to do with that lot on 14th? This vacant lot on 14th, what are we going to do with it? What's the right answer? Go ahead, please. Global issue 4. This map didn't come out as well as I would have liked, but on the right-hand side up there is every violation of the property maintenance code that has been logged into the computer from January to May 10th. It's 300 and something like that. How do we handle property violations when the owner cannot afford to make repairs? The answer is, for several years, we've worked with group work camps. We've worked with people working cooperatively. We've worked with Baraka Church. We've worked with SELF. We've done a lot of things where we can come in and help you get your property back up to code if you are not too bad off. And by not too bad off, I mean you don't need $10,000 in repairs to get back to property maintenance code. If you have one run of gutter, you have something small, you need paint, we'll come in, we'll help you. Question becomes, if you can't afford it to keep it up after I leave, say I come in and do $1,000 worth and I get your house back to code compliance again. If you don't have any money to keep it up, the minute I walk out the door, at some point in the next 2, 3, 4, or 5 years, you're going to be back out of compliance again. How many times do we fix your house? How many times do I use your taxpayer dollars to get somebody who can't afford their house back in compliance? We'll talk about it. We've done it several times for a lot of people. We've not done several times for one person, but we've done for years. We have helped people get their property back at no cost to them. But again, if you can't afford to keep it up when I leave, what's the answer? Go ahead, please. Global issue 5, buffer. If you were building a city in this day and age, and you had an active steel mill, you would never, ever, ever put housing up against the fence of an active steel mill. In today's world, you'd have the steel mill here, and then you'd have light industrial here, and then you'd have commercial here, and then you'd have multifamily here, and way over here, you'd have single-family homes if you were doing it today. Well, this city's 100 years old, and we have housing up against the fence all the way around AK Steel. Those people complain, my kids all have asthma, and my house and my cars have this stuff on them. You need to make AK do something. Well, the problem is AK and SunCoke are almost always operating within their EPA permits. Every once in a while, and I'll say it, every once in a while, something belches at AK or SunCoke, but there are monitors, literally air monitors, all over the area, and when something belches, ding, 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 they go off, they shut everything down, they quickly get back in compliance, they self-report to the EPA, and they're right back where they're supposed to be. The problem is they're right next to all that pollution, but they're operating within their permit. That's going to continue. So, do we start creating a perimeter, a buffer around AK Steel? That area that's in red is 500 feet. The area in yellow is 1,000 feet. There are over 2,000 homes in the buffer area. What we are going to do is we're going to talk about it generally, but when we get to that topic, I'm going to have Ashley create maps in about 10 to 12 different areas, and we're going to say, right on Lefferson between Highland and here, here's what 500 feet, here's what 1,000 feet looks like. I'm going to put the tax delinquent properties on there. I'm going to put the number of rentals in there. I'm going to put the number, all the things that are going on those houses, and we're going to say, do we need a buffer here? Is it 500, 250, 100 feet? No buffer? 1,000 feet? What should we do? Who's impacted? And make some decisions. Then we'll go on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And the idea is, at some point at the end of this, we'll say, this is what a buffer looks like. Obviously, take years. But again, if I got a vacant house against the fence, and we've decided that's where the buffer needs to be, and it's tax delinquent, that's a good one to start with foreclosure. Let's hit it and go. Let's get on it, because we've already decided that tax delinquent, if it's under these conditions, we're going to foreclose on them. All right. Now we're headed in the right direction. Go ahead, please. Home ownership. The world has changed, and the realtors will probably agree with that. For 20, 30 years, we promoted home ownership. Everybody should own their home. Then a whole bunch of people lost their home during the recession. And so two things have happened. Number one, people who lost their home, some of them don't want to ever own another home again. And then you got millennials that don't care. A lot of them don't care about owning a home. I just want to live here and ride my bicycle and do cool stuff. So, does home ownership matter in Middletown? What does it do to crime? What does it do to property values? Does it still matter? Is there an ideal homeownership goal for Middletown? What does it do to promote neighborhood stability? We'll talk about those. I'll give you the updated stats from what does the rest of Butler County look like? What does Ohio look like? What do we look like? Why are we different? Do we care if we're different? Does it matter? If it does, what should we do to start moving things around? Again, I'll show you a lot of tools that are out there. There's a lot of cool stuff on every one of these. A lot of people have already figured this out. That's the cool thing about running a city. There are cities all over the United States. Somebody's figured out everything that we want to do. Somebody's already figured it out. We just have to take the best practices and say, how do we use those here? And so we'll talk about home ownership. What do we think we should be doing? What kind of tools can we use to do whatever it is we think we want to do? We'll talk about it. Go ahead. Rental housing. Single family versus multifamily mix. How many single family homes should we have as rentals? How many multifamily? What are we going to do with our subsidized housing? We'll get back to 2008, 2009, we had 11 times, at the worst, 11 times the state average of subsidized housing in the city of Middletown. 11 times. You wonder why you can't pave roads? Well, when you have 11 times the state average of people who are extremely, by definition, extremely low income, there's not a lot of income tax coming in to support your services. So we are down somewhere around 5%. I'll get the number when we get there. I'll have a better number for you. But we're still 5 times the state average, somewhere around there. What do we think about that? Rental registration and licensing. Landlords will jump up and down. And that's okay. Maybe that's not something we should do. But we'll look at it. There are communities all over Ohio that have some type of rental registration and licensing. We have a very rudimentary thing in place now through our water department, where when you are a rental, you have to give us a local address to get a hold of somebody, so that if we have a problem and you're in Idaho, you are supposed to give us a good number, a good way to contact you, so that if we have problems, we have a contact. That's all we do right now. Should we do more? I don't know. Some communities require criminal and financial background checks. I worked with a landlord group a couple years ago, and we now have in the city of Middletown, any landlord that belongs to the group can get a $9 criminal and financial background check on any proposed tenant. $9. Why wouldn't you do that? What's the cost of having a bad renter, of having to evict them, of having them tear up your place, of running their credit and finding out they defaulted 4 times before they came to ask to rent your place? Should we require that? I don't know. What is the optimal number of rentals for Middletown? If we look at Middletown, and this is 2015, again, this is the latest stuff out of the census, we were at 47.3% of our housing stock is rental. If you back us out, back Middletown numbers out of the rest of Butler County, the rest of Butler County, which includes Hamilton and all the university stuff in Oxford, the rest of the county combined is at 27.7%. We have 20% more rentals than the rest of Butler County. Is that a problem? I don't know. We'll talk about it. Maybe it isn't. But it's something we need to at least look at and say, maybe we're different than the rest of the county. Maybe we should. I don't know. We'll talk about it in detail. Go ahead, please. Overabundance of less competitive housing. A lot of these charts around there talk about 2-bedroom or less units. We have approximately 2,000 2-bedroom units more than the rest of Butler County. There's a market for 2-bedroom, but we have way too many. Small house, small lot size. Again, that house is not a bad house. The problem is we have so many of them. It gets back to that 70% starter home thing. You buy that house when you just get married, great. You have 2 kids, uh-oh, that's not big. We're crawling all over each other. I need a bigger house. 70% of our housing is starter homes. You're now going to Springboro, you're going to Mason, you're going to Lakota, you're doing your stuff. Older non-historic homes, I've said this before in other places, but some of you have heard it before. Do you think when they came back from World War II and they were building all the houses for the GIs that were coming back, all the guys, and they built all those little 2-bedroom bungalows that were, 800 square feet, and they were slapping them up as fast as they could get them up so that they could get the GIs a place for their families to move into? Do you think they intended those properties to last 100 years? I'm going to tell you, I don't think they did. They were built fast, they were built cheap, they were built, we got to get these guys a place to live. Those houses are 80 years old now. They're getting towards the end of their useful life. We got to figure out what we're going to do with those. What's the balance between affordable and the city's needs? Again, it gets back to that 70%. If everybody who has bigger families and bigger incomes is leaving the city, makes it hard for me to pave your streets. It makes it hard for me to put quality recreation programs and things into your quality of life because, again, the minute you start making more money, you move out of the city. It's something we need to figure out. We need to talk about. Go ahead, please. Healthy neighborhoods. So we've talked about some of these great tax delinquent rentals, homeowners, this and that. As we've made some decisions about what that looks like, the next piece of it will be knowing that, what do we think a healthy neighborhood looks like? And that's where we get everybody involved and say, what is a healthy neighborhood? And we'll start with infrastructure. What does the street look like? What do sidewalks look like? What do alleys look like? What do street lights look like? Property maintenance code. Are we going to require every house on every street to be compliant with the property maintenance code? How would we do that? What are we going to do with our parks? We have 30 parks, and most of them have outdated equipment in them. We mow them, and we say, they're there if you want to do something. Go ahead. Would we be better off having 20 parks or 15 parks and take the money that we're using for mowing and put new equipment and stuff in? I don't know. I mean, park board and everything will eventually get into that. But what does a healthy neighborhood look like? If you have a park there, what does that park look like? Does it look like some of our older parks? Is that what you want? Do you consider that a healthy quality of life? Boy, I'm moving there because of that park. Probably not here. Probably not. Gateways. Newer communities, newer subdivisions have brick gateways and lighting and bushes and flowers. Older part of the city got nothing. Do we care? I don't know. I'll ask. Do we care? Should we have gateways? Should we identify neighborhoods? Should we do good things to make the infrastructure of the neighborhood inviting, safe? Safe? Are we doing things with lighting? How about lighting alleys? That's where a lot of our crime takes place. Should we light our alleys? How would we do it? One of the things I asked the Public Works Director, I said, as I'm looking at some of this, one of the things I'm going to suggest to the group is, Public Works Director Scott Tadich, I want you to find a solar-powered motion detector alley light. So that if it's 11 o'clock at night and it's pitch black in the alley, no one's there, nothing's happening. Somebody drives down the alley, everybody's watching. Lights are come on. You get down the other side and go out and they leave. 10 minutes later, they go off again. What if you put a planter in the middle or some kind of decorative landscaping so that you can't come in and do your drug deal and go out the other side? We should talk about that. What should we do with our alleys? What if I put a concrete pad behind each alley so that you have a place to park your car? So it's not on dirt, it's not on gravel. It looks better. I was in Kansas City a couple years ago at the city manager conference, and they took us out to a redeveloped neighborhood. And what they had done with this neighborhood is they had changed the entire philosophy of how they were going to do the houses. Front of the house looks great. You have to make the back of your house look great. And what they did is they took us back in the alleys, and what you found was the alleys were now the place where everybody was communing together. All the garages, all the back were open. People had big screen TVs. People were barbecuing in the alley down there. That was where the neighborhood met, was in the alley to watch the Ohio State game, to do, and you could walk down and you could see people working on the cars. People, I was like, wow, this is cool. What a cool way to do things. We should look at our alleys. What should we be doing, safety-wise? Repaving them, all that. Go ahead, please. How about the non-infrastructure characteristics? How about internet access for low-income neighborhoods? It's important. These kids, a lot of them are trying to log in to do their homework, except they don't have internet access. That's a problem. Neighborhood business. In many cases, during my time here, we got rid of a lot of neighborhood businesses. And part of the problem was, and Chief was running narcotics about the same time I was doing a lot of that work, Baltimore Street Gang, right there at the end of the corner at the neighborhood business. 16th and Minnesota used to be one of our biggest open-air drug markets. We all know him. If you've been here for years, I was prosecutor, he's been here. If you've been here, we know which neighborhoods, we know which convenience stores, we knew where the problems were. And in many cases, we just went in and destroyed them. You're done. You're not going to hang out there anymore. Problem is, now I got neighborhoods that don't have access to anything. They don't have access to transportation easily. And so where do they get their haircut? Where do they get a bowl of soup, a can of soup because they need it for a recipe? And the answer is they can't anymore. How about food deserts? We have food deserts. If you don't want a food desert, in theory, you're supposed to be, I think it's 1.5 miles with something like that within a fresh produce, fresh meat grocery. We have areas in the city where you can't do that. We should take a look at that. Are there something we can do to support that? Smart city concepts, energy conservation, those types of things. School readiness, tutoring, daycare, transportation, crime, recreation, and workforce participation. What do those look like in a healthy neighborhood? I can tell you right now, we've got a lot of neighborhoods that are not healthy in many ways. And so as we start looking, we're going to start with this neighborhood right here. I'm going to start asking about all this stuff. And I'm not going to say, sure, we're going to get them back code compliant with their property. Yes, we're going to pave the street. Yes, we're going to fix the sidewalk. How do we fix their lives? How do we make this neighborhood healthy so that these people live here, work here, want to stay here, and contribute to what we're trying to do in this city so that we can pave the streets and do the recreation and all the other things that you want us to do? Go ahead, please. Gentrification. That'll be one of the things we'll talk about all the time, because everything we're going to do is going to impact people. I can start with vacant property. I can go to out-of-town landlords. Eventually, we're going to be the little widow whose husband built the house in 1945 who says, "You'll drag my cold, dead corpse out of this house before I leave," as the house is falling down around her. How are we going to handle that? No matter what we do, if we're going to do the type of global things we're talking about here, people are going to be impacted. Property owners, tenants, people, real people. And we have to figure out how we're going to handle that. What's the answer? I can tell you, I have some tools, and we'll talk about them when we get there. Designated redevelopment area. Let's say we're going to go into this neighborhood and we're going to do all these cool stuff, and property values over the next 5 years are expected to go up $20,000 a house. And you go, wait a minute, they can't afford those property taxes. One of the things you can do is you can set up a designated redevelopment area and say, in this area that we've designated, we're going to waive any increases in your property taxes for 10 years. I can't do it indefinitely, but I can do it for a period of time so that you get the benefit of 10 years of living there. And hopefully, if your property goes up enough, you can sell it if you want to, or make arrangements over 10 years so that you can afford it, whatever. At the end of 10 years, at some point, you're right, it's all going to come due. That 11th year, you'd have to pony up the extra money. Again, is that helping the city long-term? If that whole neighborhood raises in value, if more homeowners move in, if people join the workforce more, if the things that we want to do, and we're able to pave more streets, and we're able to bring more recreation and all that, is that the answer? But we are going to have problems. We're going to impact people, real people. And I'll tell you this one other thing. People say, well, are you going to, what about, I said, well, it's one of the pieces. I promise you that if we do this stuff and we do it right and we figure out the gentrification and we do the best that we can with all this, I can tell you just from human nature, if we touch enough stuff as a city, we will do dumb stuff. Because human beings make mistakes. And so if we do 99% of it right, that 100th homeowner, we will just totally do something dumb and stupid and wrong. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And I'm not going to tell you it's not going to happen. I'm going to promise you it will happen. We won't mean to do it. We'll make it right. We'll clean it up. But if we touch enough stuff, we're going to booger up something bad. We're going to hurt somebody. And we're not going to mean to. And we're going to go, oh, I can't believe that. Can't believe we did that. We had one several years ago that house was supposed to be empty. We're showing up for demolition. Family opens the door. What? You're not supposed to be here. Well, we are. And then she comes out in her wheelchair, and I'm like, oh my God. Atkins kicks paraplegic out of the house. Oh, God. All right. Real. It happened. And so we got a realtor involved. We helped them find a new place. I had to wait 6 months to knock the house down. We helped them find a new place. We helped them move. Those things are real. Those things happen. We thought we had title. We didn't. We thought it was empty. It's not. Those things happen. Sometimes it's we didn't know. Sometimes we knew and we screwed up. So keep that in mind as we move forward. Everything we're going to do, we'll do everything we can to make it right. But now and then we're going to screw up. I promise you. Go ahead. Target neighborhoods. Once we've said, here's all the global stuff, here's what a healthy neighborhood looks like, then we got to figure out where we're going to start. Where are we going to start? If we're going to pick a neighborhood up and revitalize it and lift it up, where do we start? Which neighborhoods are going to be eligible? We're going to have to talk about that. Where should we be looking? Is there a logical basis to pick one over another? How do we choose our first neighborhood? What's the process? Why is that neighborhood better or worse than any other neighborhood to get started with? We've got to start somewhere. How do we involve the public in the process? And in my mind, I would like to pick the first 3 neighborhoods, 1, 2, 3, in some logical way that we think makes sense. Because the idea would be, go ahead, once we do that, we'll design it, infrastructure, non-infrastructure. Okay, we're going to start in neighborhood A, and we're going to do this to the streets, and I'm going to get Scott Tadish to look at the pavement and tell me how much it's going to cost to get those streets refurbished. Well, Doug, this one's totally messed up. It's going to be $400,000 a lane mile. This one's not too bad. It's going to be $150,000 a lane mile. Price this neighborhood out for me. By the way, go look at all the sidewalks. Tell me what we got to do to fix all the sidewalks. Go look at the alleys. Tell me what we got to do with the alleys. Chief, what's the standard for street lighting on these residential streets? Do I have enough street lighting? No. How many more do I have to add? What's the cost of that? All of that. What? Yeah. All of that. Property code violations. How are we going to get everybody back in code compliance again? What are we going to do with demolition? How about the community assets? Parks, recs, crime, neighborhood participation, all that stuff. We're going to design that neighborhood. This is what we think we're going to try to do to lift that neighborhood up and get it ready to go. Go ahead, please. Second piece is now that we've done all that, we got to figure out what it's going to cost us. What's it going to cost for paving, sidewalks, trees? We want trees up and down the street. All right, we can do that. Where are we going to pay for it? There's a lot of cool stuff. There's grants out there. There's general fund. There's CDBG funds. There's a lot of stuff. It depends on what we're doing, which pool of money I can pull for different purposes to put this thing together. Then we're going to talk about maintenance. Let's say we want trees every 10 feet all the way down the street. Oh, that's going to be pretty. They're going to die, some of them. And a couple of years down the road, we're going to have to start trimming them. How are we going to pay for that? Is the neighborhood willing to spend 25 cents a month on their water bill to go into a fund to do the common areas, the gateway and the trees? Yes. Are they willing to do 50 cents? Yes. Are they willing to do 75 cents? Nope. Okay. Then we're going to have to talk about, as a group, we got 50 cents, 900 houses, 12 months. We have about $8,000 a year for maintenance. All right. How many trees do we think will die a year? 10%, okay? Do we have enough money to pay for it? Yeah, no, we don't. Maybe we better do trees every 20 feet, or maybe we better take the trees out and do something different. We'll talk about all that. How do we keep it up? Do we have some type of I'll call it a homeowner association, but it's basically a neighborhood fund of some kind in some way that's structured in a way to maintain the good stuff we're going to bring to that neighborhood? And if so, how do we do it? So go ahead, please. And then the reason I want to do 3 neighborhoods, depending on where we start and what we try to do in each neighborhood, we may over a 5-year period get to 1 neighborhood only, 2nd neighborhood, 3 neighborhoods. It kind of depends on how extensive we're going to be and what it's going to cost for the things we want to do in each of these neighborhoods. What I'd like to do is build a 5-year plan that if things work, we don't hit a recession, revenues go as we can, we think we can do each of these over the next 5 years, and we think we'll get about this far in the process. Again, we'll be way down the road. This is way down the road to, was it 1 neighborhood, 2 neighborhood, 3? We should be able to pretty well lay it out by that point. This is where we're at. Go ahead, please. And then I'd like to, whether it's you particularly or whether it's somebody, again, with your skill set, I would like to keep this group in place. And whether they meet quarterly or semi-annually or however that we think, again, you guys can help us decide. We have a 5-year plan. We know how we're going to pay for it. We know what we're going to do. We know what to lay in the budget for council each year. I think this group should continue to meet. And they should say, it's the middle of the year. Are we on track? Okay. In August, we're going to start the next year's budget. Do we still think we want to do that thing we said we wanted to do in year 2? Okay. All right. Thank you for your time this 6 months. We'll see you again in January, whatever. But keep this group in some form together with about those disciplines so that you can say, wait a minute, we did this first thing and we didn't realize that we're having a horrible impact on landlords. Wait a minute, we thought the property values were going to go up and they're actually dropping. What the hell did we do wrong? That's where you guys and your expertise come in and say, number 1, in my discipline, I see a problem. Number 2, this is what I believe is going on here that's not performing the way we all thought it was going to go. So I think it's important to keep this group together. Again, whether it's you, after you're done, I may wear you out by the end of this. But to keep people like you involved in the process so that as we move forward, we're continuing to go ahead and keep this heading in the right direction. Go ahead, please. Gets back to that 1963 plan for 55 years. We did not fix this problem. You have the chance to be the team that starts moving it in the right direction. Go ahead, please. Fix it or destroy it. Please don't let it go to 70 years or 75 years. Please don't do that. I can tell you, I'm 55. I got somewhere around 10 years. Hopefully around 65 I can quit. We'll see. It would be a shame if I coasted the next 10 years and didn't have to fix any of this. That would be a shame. But if they don't hold me accountable and you guys don't hold me accountable, of course you won't get any recreation. Your houses will deteriorate. That's it, let's get in the game. Determine what's right for the city. That would be my first recommendation. What is the right thing to do? In the past, I've seen a lot of situations where we jumped to number 3. Oh, you're going to hurt people, so we're not going to do anything. I'm going to suggest to you, at least start with, do the right thing. This is going to improve the city. If we take this action, we're going to improve the city. It's going to make the city healthier, stronger, more financially sustainable. Now circle back and say, if we do that, who are we hurting? And can we mitigate that? Can we take care of them in a compassionate way? If the answer is no, we may have to go back up to that second one and go, maybe we can't do everything we want to do. But start with what's right and work your way down to how do we, people who are going to get hurt, how do we make them whole? How do we help them? Some people will get hurt. I promise you, if we're going to create a buffer all the way around AK, just to pick one out of the air, at some point we're going to displace people. I can do the vacant, I can do the tax foreclosed, I can do, at some point, if there are 2,000 houses and we're going to take 1,000 of them out over the next 10 years, some number of those people I'm going to displace. I can buy them out, there's lots of ways we can deal with them. We will hurt some people. Is it in the best interest of the city long-term, 10 to 20, 25 years out, that we clear that buffer out around AK Steel? If it is, then we have to figure out how to deal with it and not back off from doing the right thing. Try to solve multiple ills with one action. Again, that house that's up against AK Steel, if it's vacant, if it's an out-of-town owner, if it's on a street where the infrastructure is totally gone, if it's in a high-crime area, if it's 2-bedroom or less, if it's not property code compliant, if I could remove that one house, I've solved 7 variables on these charts with one action. Where we can, let's be smart and do that. Won't always be able to, but it's easy. Again, low-hanging fruit. That one house solves 7 different things that I'm trying to make better in this city by removing that one house. As much as we can, let's do that. Go ahead, please. Keep this discussion focused on the issue and not the people. This is real stuff. This is hard stuff. The reason this hasn't been fixed in 55 years is because it's hard and it impacts people. This is real. Smart people disagree on a correct course of action. Republicans, Democrats. Smart. Completely different philosophies of life. We all bring our own disciplines. We all bring our own life experiences to this process. Let's talk about the house. Let's talk about the people we're displacing. Let's talk about the code compliance, whatever it is, and not say, I don't think you're very nice. That's not what this is about. Let's keep it on. Let's keep it real. Let's keep it on what we're talking about. How are we improving our housing? We will have multiple examples of best practices that are going on around the state, maybe around the country, depends on where we're at. We will try to give you a total viewpoint. Rental housing, here's what 30 different communities are doing with rental housing in the state of Ohio. We'll give you from really good to maybe not very good at all. Where should we be in the mix? But you'll see a lot. If we're not going to go, what do you think? We're going to go, here's a number of different ways to look at it. What do you think we should be doing? We're going to try to, as much as we can, give you a lot of best practices that will allow you to say, well, those, number 5 seems like it would work well for us. Okay, let's talk about that. If there is some place that's doing something well, if Dayton is doing something incredibly well that we think we need to go look at, a couple things. I can go up to Dayton and take pictures. I can send Ashley up to take pictures. I can ask them to come down and talk to us about it. Or if it's one of those things, we really think we want to walk the neighborhood and get a feel for what this is and whether or not it's good for the neighborhood, I have a transit system. I'll put you on a bus. We'll get a driver, we'll go up there and we'll take a look at it. I don't want to do that often, but if there's one thing that's particular, we've done it with council a couple times. Hey, something that's not in Middletown that we think we might want to try, we'd get on a bus, we'd drive down to Cincinnati, we went down when we looked at the Ryan homes, and we walked the neighborhood, and we asked questions. And we actually said, so this is what the houses would look like. Yes. How old are these? They're 4 years old. Well, they're still in pretty good shape. We asked, it was a good experience. If we need to do that, we can do that. I have a transit system. We'll get a bus driver. Go ahead. I'd like to move at the fastest pace possible. These are big ticket items, global stuff, hard. But we want to tie it into our master plan. We want to start laying that 5-year plan out so that I can get it into the budget so that we can start doing things. My guess is we won't get anything into the 19 budget because that starts in August, but we sure would like to be at a place where as we're getting towards either the second half of 19 or into the 20 budget, that we have this thing, this is where we're starting. We need about this much money, I can start getting CDBG and this grant and this over there and a recreation that and this and start putting it all together so that it's ready to go. We'll have to update the public. We are taping this meeting, and I will tape all of them, and eventually they'll be up on the web page. We will probably have a web page devoted to this process. It will have all that stuff that's in your binders, so everybody that wants to can get on and look at it and read it, digest it, listen to me speak for an hour and a half, and get us through that process. So they have the ability, and then at some point we'll have to talk about as a group, how often do we have a public thing? What does that look like? Who's invited? How do we do it? Or is videotaping enough? You know, again, we'll have to have a discussion about how that all works. Oh, and then the global tool. If you can drop that and pull the other spreadsheet up. We have designed, the finance director and I've tied in the different census tracts and the data in each of these census tracts. And as we start moving forward and we say, okay, this buffer around AK, we're just going to knock down 100 homes in this census tract. That's what we think we should do. We have now designed a spreadsheet that I can go in and go, okay, well, in that census tract, the average home value is $56,000, and the average income for that household that lives in that house is $35,000. Picking numbers out of the air. And we're going to demolish, and it's 50-50 rental, and you want to demolish 100 houses. We can drop that into this spreadsheet and show you what happens the year you do that. Well, 56,000 times 40 houses is this much value, which equates to this much property tax that you're wiping off the face of the earth. Won't be coming in anymore. 40 families at $35,000 times 1.75% income tax means when you knock that house down, you'll no longer be getting whatever it is, $800 worth of income tax from that family. And then so we'll show you what that happens. And then we'll start laying it out over the next 5 years, cumulative. So the idea would be, as we start building the 5-year plan, we should have a fairly good model of, we're going to try to knock down 50 houses here, build 2 things here, and do infill construction here and this. And I should be able to show you, okay, in 2019, this is what that does for you. Year 2, 2019 stuff plus 2020. You start showing cumulative. And then the answer will be, it's consistent with what we said we wanted to do. Here's the financial impact of that. Are we still happy with our decision? Well, we're going to knock out 1,000 houses of those 2,000 around AK Steel. Okay. You're going to lose $800,000 a year in property and income tax. At $50,000 a house and $35,000 income, whatever. We'll punch it in. We'll show you. This is the effect of that. I want to build some houses. Okay. Here's the effect of that. Once you build them, you build a house and you put a homeowner in it. Well, if rentals stay flat and you add a new home with a homeowner, your percentage goes down. Your rentals goes down because you added a homeowner. Okay. If you wipe out 40 houses and it's 50%, let's say it's 70% rental. I wipe out 40 houses in a neighborhood that's 70% rental. That means, now I got to do math. Let's do 10 houses. 7 rentals go away, 3 homeowners go away, which means the net of that transaction is we've lost 4 rentals. Kept homeowners equal, lost 4 rentals, which means, again, if we value home ownership, we're changing that. Rentals, the percentage of rentals is going down. But what we should be able to do is show you as we build this, the effect. I think that's pretty powerful. We're going to build 100 homes at $175,000, all right? That's what that does to you. We're going to knock down 100 homes at this much. That's what it does to you. Cumulatively, if you do both of them, this is what happens. Over the next 5 years, here's the cumulative effect of that. Are we heading in the right direction? Well, we want to put this great buffer around there, but we're going to lose $600,000. We might want to slow that down. We might want to think about that. But the idea, we'll have this available, and as we start putting things in, I'll key it in for you. Doug, I think in this area we should do this. Let's key it in, see what it does to us. we may want to say, yeah, we're willing to lose $300,000 over here because we're going to make $600,000 more extra over there, and we get more homeowners, we lose renters, we do this and that. Yeah, that actually works. Or not, but we'll talk about it. Go ahead, please, if you can go back to where we were. And one more. Couple other things. People bitch about paving all the time. I get it. Our roads are not great. This is just in the last month or two this was put together. If you look at that chart, we are spending more on paving. When's paving going to be a priority? Believe it or not, it is a priority. We are spending more in paving per year than every community around us, with the exception of Westchester, because they have more money than they know what to do with. But the problem with that is, even though we're spending $2,300,000 this year on paving, that puts us on a 51-year cycle to get our paving caught up. That doesn't get it. Most roads last around 25 years, which means we're at double. That doesn't get it. We got a problem. However, go ahead. When I came and interviewed for this job, one of the things I told City Council was, I think I can create a plan that will get you back in a paving cycle by around 2020. And I laid it out for him, and I'm not going to get into all the details for you. But I made that plan on the assumption that we had $120 million that we were behind on paving. Scott Tadich, God bless him, came and said, we've updated our paving, it's actually $161 million. Really? So I got to find another $41 million. However, if you take the plan I originally gave to council, Ryan Holmes wants to start building 150 homes in Sawyer's Mill. We're working on the details now to get back in court. We've got a little bit of court stuff we got to do to clean up an old lawsuit so that we can free up the property, so that we can start building houses. They want to build 150 homes in 4 years? 4 years? 3 years. 175, actually they're 150 to 225. I just plunged in 175,000 a home. Potential income tax, if you take the income it takes to buy one of those homes, gives you an extra $230,000 a year just by letting Brian build those homes. And they're in the price range. We talked about a balanced housing stock. We have no housing in that range. And we have very little new housing. We need these. It's important that we get them. There's 230,000, just let Ryan do their thing. We have 3,400 vacant lots. We have vacant houses. We have 500 vacant lots. If you put 500 of them back in play in some way, whether you build an infill lot or you fill a vacant housing unit, and our mean, which is average household income in the city of Middletown, is $49,634. I realize not everybody makes that, but again, I'm trying to give you an idea of how we would look at this. 500 homes of those vacant houses or vacant lots, you put back into play with homeowners, 49,000 household income, you have another $400,000 a year in income tax. You put those two together, 434, 229, add it to the plan I gave council for 2020. Go ahead. And you are at a 25-year paving cycle. Every street in the city would be paved every 25 years. By solving your housing problems, you solve your paving problems. Housing's fixed, paving's fixed. We start fixing our parks as part of our neighborhoods. Our city's fixed, folks. Now, let's talk about labor participation. We have 61% of people who are 16 or over in the workforce in the city of Middletown. The rest of Butler County is at 65%. More people who live in those areas are working than are working in Middletown. If we would just, through some of our housing, if we add those Ryan homes and those people are working, you start moving people into vacant houses that have jobs. You start recruiting teachers who teach in the Middletown School District to come live in the district that they work in. You start working on those things, and what you find is if you would get us up to 65%, you'd add another 878 workers. Per capita is per person income in the city of Middletown from the census. Each person in the Middletown makes an average of $20,786, which means not having them working like the rest of Butler County costs us $18 million in payroll a year, which equates to another $300,000 in lost income tax. If we could just get people in this town working similar to the way they are in Butler County, the rest of the county. You want to pave your streets? You want recreation? Let's help do it through housing. We get people working in houses. How about all those tax delinquent people who can't, many of them probably are not working. At some point, we got to talk about how do we start turning this in the right direction. Again, now go ahead. From 2000 to 2015, this is all from the census, we lost 3,477 working age adults. Obviously, not all of them are going to be working, but if you put them all back in play, you brought them all back to the city, you put them all to work, there's another $1.2 million a year in income tax that's available. And you can do it, a lot of it, through your housing. You get people to reoccupy these houses. You get them fixed up, you fix your neighborhoods, you make them attractive, property values go up, people want to live here. And you can solve your paving and your recreation and your quality of life issues as much through your housing policy as you can through raising taxes. It's easy to raise taxes. It's hard to pay them. Why not bring more people in to help us? When you look at the long-term control plan and all the stuff we're going to have to do with water and sewer, wouldn't it be great to have another 1,000 people paying sewers so that I didn't have to raise your rates as much because those other 1,000 people are going to help with the burden? Use your housing policy. Use your housing to fix your problems. And that's what we got to do as this group. Go ahead, please. Hour and 35 minutes. Thank you for listening. There's a lot of information I've given you tonight. I've also given you a lot in the binders. Question becomes, now that everybody's on the same page, now that everybody has access to the same information, now that you've heard where we're trying to go and what we're trying to do, question becomes, how often do we start to meet to try to get this going? Do we continue to do this day and time? How long do we want to meet at each time? We need to start putting some things together so that we start moving this thing forward. And if there's anybody that wants to bail, this is hard and this is going to suck. And at the end, I'm going to ask y'all to put your name on it. I'm okay with you saying, we did 25 things. I don't like 4 of them, but the committee did agree this is how we're going to move forward. I want you guys to sign off on this. When I take it to council and stand with me and say, we don't all agree with everything, but we all agree that this is going to help Middletown. And so we're standing with Doug to give this to council to say we should implement this. That's what I need from you. If you're not willing to do that, no harm, no foul. You don't have to tell me now. I'm not calling anybody out. You can call me and say, I just did not do that. No problem. No harm, no foul. I won't talk to anybody. No shame, nothing. Let me know if you don't want to do it. I'll replace people if we need to, whether it's a homeowner or a community member or discipline, whatever, it's fine. But we need to start talking. The first thing we need to talk about is there's a lot of stuff here. Do we want to meet once a month, which I think is probably maybe not enough, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks? Do we want to meet at this day and time? How long do we want to meet before we cuss and discuss it to a point we're tired of looking at each other each night? And that's why I'm kind of looking for you guys for some input. You guys are giving us your time. We're very grateful. We want to be respectful of your time. How would you like to start putting this together? This is now, I'm done talking. It's an open discussion. What do we think we should try to do? Yes?
Let's work it backwards.
And I apologize. I'll say this also. I've got the mic, but I also don't hear very well. And so if I ask you to repeat, it's because I'm half deaf.
Work backwards. You want it done by what date? So then we have to figure out how we get to that date.
September. So we're going to meet Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. No, I'm kidding. Ideally, no. Am I dying? Oh, okay. Thank you. Ideally, by the end of the year, I don't know if that's possible. I would like to move as fast as possible, but I don't want to sacrifice quality for speed. These are, again, 55-year problems, and I call these 50-year decisions. The things we're going to do are going to change that neighborhood in the area for the next 50 years. So let's not screw it up. I'd rather have people 10 years from now go, God, Atkins really did some good stuff, instead of Atkins, what an idiot. Let's do it right. So as fast as we can do it right, if we could get it done by the end of the year, it would be awesome, which is 6 months. I don't know if we can do it that fast. But the idea would be, as we're getting towards the end of this, it's going to be one of the last pieces that the transportation people are going to need to start looking at laying out the public transit and things like that. And so ideally, we'd have it done in time for them to finish their work. But if it isn't right, then we take our time. We're too many people we're impacting.
You only got 6 months left in this year.
Right.
So if we were to have it twice a month, that would give us 12 meetings, which would be once a
That's-
month, continuing.
Well, and I can tell you that I can feed you a lot of the information ahead of time. I can get out, this is what we're going to talk about on the next meeting, and here's what we're going to talk about 2 meetings. I can get you a lot of, if you're willing to read and you're willing to think and digest, and I can prime a lot of those. I'm going to try to stay about 4 topics ahead of you. That's my goal. Yes, ma'am.
I would encourage us to think about twice a month. That's what we were talking about, to have a set day.
Yeah.
And that we're gonna meet twice a month, and I think that we could do our homework and keep moving.
And like I said, I think I can get out ahead of you and give you all the stuff ahead of time, so that when we get there, we're at least, instead of talking for an hour and a half, I talk for 10 minutes and go, all right, now let's start talking. Like if we talk about vacant property, I can give you the listing of what the other 30 communities in Ohio already have in place, what they charge, what they do, what you have to do, how often you have to do it. You guys can have read that and given it some thought before you even got here. And then we can just start the discussion with, what do you think about that? Is that something we want to even look at? And the answer is no. It's like, well, that was easy. On to the next vacant property topic. But I can get that out twice a month. Is that something that at least we think? And again, I understand you're going to have vacations and stuff. And frankly, I may have times I can't be here, and I'll make somebody else do it. But especially the really bad ones, I have her do it. But yeah, the idea would be if we could do it maybe twice a month. Does Thursday seem to be tonight? Is Thursday generally? And I understand, like I said, some days you'll have stuff already going on. But if you know now, every other Thursday, or the second and fourth, or first and third Thursday of the month, I can do it every 2 weeks, or we could do first and third, second, fourth. I mean, I'll do whatever you guys want to do. Yes, sir.
I know that I'm out first Thursday every month.
Okay.
Based on business, so.
Yep.
Second and fourth.
Second and fourth Thursday.
Yeah, because I can arrange coverage for my.
And again, and I understand, again, we're all going to have vacation. We're going to have something come up at work. Our kids are going to be sick, whatever, and you can't make it. It's always helpful if you say, hey, just to let you know, because again, I waited a little bit to make sure everybody got here. If I know you're not coming, I won't wait for you. We'll go ahead and get started. So second and fourth Thursdays, 5:30, work okay? I'll feed you if you want to be fed. Yeah, is here okay? Yeah. Any other opening comments? I mean, we'll plan. What is this? Be the second Thursday of June. We'll open up with tax delinquent property and get started. Yes, ma'am.
Can I suggest one thing? When this information gets out,
Mm-hmm.
like now, and the committee gets out, and the meeting dates maybe, or say we're meeting twice a month, if you can build in one community forum for people that are interested to hear summaries of what's going on, that might be helpful. I mean, just a summary of kind of what the health talks, not the housing talks are, because I think as you move the community along,
Mm-hmm.
and they recognize that the people are on the committee and they're people they can talk to on the sidelines to see and give feedback, that can make sure that you're, not for any input or whatever, but just kind of a summary.
I think it would be neat as part of our webpage to have the ability to provide input, the ability to type in, Atkins, I hate what you're doing. You're a schmuck, whatever.
Be kind of just some kind of communication.
We're planning on a webpage and updating it on social media as this progresses. Yeah.
And again, we're taping it, and the hope is to put it on the webpage. If you want to watch it, you can. So not hiding the ball. You can see everything I said.
Absolutely.
But I do think, and again, we'll have to talk, and maybe we'll do that first meeting in June. I think we need to talk about how often do we actually go out, or we open it up to the public. This, I can't have 75 people or we won't get anything done. But what we can, when we get so much done, maybe after every third topic, we can have some kind of whether it's 2 topics or 3 topics or whatever, we could say, we're going to have an overview meeting of community center, council chambers, whatever. We can talk about how that might look, and we'll go out and talk about what we've done so far and why we think what we think, something like that. We've got to figure out how to do that effectively. And this is hit and miss. There's a reason it hasn't been done in 55 years, because it's hard and it's messy and it gets people excited, rightly so. But we got to go out and do it right. So yeah, we'll have to figure out, and like I said, I may wander in and mess myself up by going out in the public, but we got to do it. The question is, how do we do it right? How do we do it right? Anything else for tonight? Yes, sir.
During the talk, I got several items that if I can ask that we could have them, or at least I could have them for next time.
Yeah. Do you mind either giving me the paper or sending us an email so we can, because
Sure.
it's one of those things too that, I do this a lot with council. So one council person will say, hey, this is kind of quirky, what about this? Well, if Steve wants to know about it, chances are Amy and Larry would also, they're getting the same questions from people. So my guess is if you have things like that, if you could email it to us, if it's global enough that everybody would like to know, I'll just get the answers together and I'll send it to the group.
For example, of the 47.3% rental,
Yes.
of those, how much are delinquent? Do we have that graph?
Yes.
What's Middletown's median age compared with the Union Centers or the
Correct.
Austin Landing?
Yeah, if you don't mind sending that to me.
When the police chief gets older like he is, I mean, I know he drives the median age.
He's 60. I mean, I don't know how much longer he's got.
60? No, thank you, Andy. Okay, I'll email it.
If you don't mind, and some of them, like the rental, I may defer until we get to the rental. But I can, if I know you're looking for that, I'll get that answer before we get to
But the reason
the
I
area.
ask this is, not 100% of people in Middletown are going to be affected by this.
Correct.
So of those people who will be, what is that target market as far as demographic and economics?
I think those are exactly the right questions.
So,
And so I will do my best to get intelligent answers. Some of it's fairly easy to put together, some of it probably less so. But if you can send those, anybody, if you have things like that of a global nature, hey, what about this? If it's, like he said, ask, what's the percentage of delinquent rentals? I may gather that up if I can, but I'll probably wait until we talk about rental housing to tie them together. But like our median age, that doesn't really fit into any direct topic. I can probably get that pretty quickly and send it on to everybody, so at least we're all seeing the same information. I'll do my best.
Doug, real quick, only thing I got is maybe you said this, I missed it, but it's easy to look at maps. I think when it comes time to it, I think this community needs to get out in the neighborhoods and see the neighborhoods for real.
Mm-hmm.
Because the map tells you one thing, but when you see it live, when you go into a vacant house and see what the neighbors are dealing with, that speaks volumes.
And beyond that, there's a lot of cool things when we get into neighborhood design. And Chief knows this. I was at a class in Louisville a couple months ago, and it was using landscaping, fencing, lighting, and things like that to redevelop neighborhoods and design crime out. And there's some incredible concepts. And what they said is, Chief and I don't drive down the street and talk about what we think we should do with fencing. You go knock on people's doors. Where's it unsafe here? It's your neighborhood. Where are you scared? They said there's two things. There's actual crime and there's fear of crime. That's true. Where's the actual crime? I have that. Chief can tell me where the calls for service are and what we're doing. Where are you concerned? Well, nobody goes down that alley between that house and that house because it's dark and it's bad. People do drug deals there. That we need to know. Yeah. And so that's where we need to get out in the community And there's a whole series, again, when we get there, I promise I'll get it all out and we'll sit down and talk about it. But there are all these different tools about how to involve the community. Gateways. Do you want a gateway? You know, it's your neighborhood. Do you want a gateway? Are you willing to pay to upkeep it? It can be wood, it can be stone, it can be wrought iron, it can be whatever. What are we willing to pay for? What do you want? Where does it go? That should be your decision. You live in the neighborhood. As long as it meets some design criteria and stuff that's acceptable to the city, let's get the people involved who are living there to make those decisions in many cases.
I was just gonna say, based on what you're talking about, us going door to door would definitely begin to build the relationships that we're looking for. And so then people will understand that, you know, that you are trying to, build the city, like, I mean, and just, for instance, an example is, you know, politicians that go door to door, they tend to have more of a better response, that type of thing. So I think, you know, going door to door would be a good way for us to build relationships.
Well, again, when we get to the place where we figure out which neighborhood we're going to start with, it's the nuts and bolts of the streets and sidewalks, but the rest of it's all, you live here. You live here. There's, you know, I'm going to put some criteria. You can't go out too far outside the, you know, I'm not going to put $8 million into your street. I don't have it, and we wouldn't be able to keep it up. But what's more important to you, more street lights or street trees down the street? Would you rather have this or would you rather have that? How much are you willing, how nice do you want it to be? Again, talk to everybody. And the other piece of that is, if I go in that neighborhood and we go door to door and nobody wants to talk to us, then you can't complain too much later. We involved you. If you didn't choose to come, I can only ask so many ways. If you don't get in the game, then you can't bitch at me later. So, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. I hope I didn't wear you out. We'll send out a meeting notice to everybody, but it'll be the second Thursday, and we'll talk a little bit about the public stuff, how often we do the public, how we do the public, how do we do that, and then we'll get started on tax delinquent property. I'll have a lot of information. I'll have a lot of stuff ready to go. I'll try to get some of it out early so that you've got some basis to have a discussion. Thank you all for your time tonight.
I don't know if these maps show.
Hold on a second. I just want to say hi. We haven't met before.
No, Mark Dixon.
Yeah,
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet
I
you.
do need that, a copy.